So every time I'm going to tell you one chidush of 3 minutes or 5 minutes, that because we did so many times, we did Megillat Esther and we know it all, but still I would like to tell you something every time that I discovered. Okay? So 5 minutes on Purim, and then we go back to a very different type of speech of Matisyahu, and then next time again a very different one, and then we'll stop Matisyahu Salomon. But the one that I want to do today, you remember that in the first perek, Haman is proposing the king to write letters because the king is asking advice from the Chachamim Yodei Haitim, that means the Jews. Like many people have always known that the Jews are the ones that give the best advice. But since they don't answer, whatever the reasons was, because Jews, whatever they answer, always they are the scapegoat when things don't go right. So whichever way they'll answer, it will be their fault. So they said that they can't answer because they don't have the Beit HaMikdash, which was very clever because it's Achashverosh that stopped the building of the Beit HaMikdash. So if you want good counselors that give you advice, you have to have a Beit HaMikdash, like it says in the Gemara, that if they would know how much brocha would come to the world from the Beit HaMikdash, they would be the first one to help us build it. Okay? So we live in a crazy world, by the way, today. You know that the Pope of today is just a bracket, is from which country? Anybody knows?
Is he from Poland?
From Argentina.
Argentina, no? He's from South America.
Yes, from Argentina. And the head, the president of Argentina, as you heard, wants to become a Jew. I have a student whose husband is the Rav of the person that this guy from Argentina, the president, made him his Rav. I repeat, the president found somebody whom he made his Rav, and that guy is a student of my friend and student's husband. And he asked a lot of advice from big Rabbonim, and he convinced him not to try to become a Jew as long as he is president, because he wouldn't be able to keep Shabbos and all kinds of such things. So after he stops being a president, we'll talk about it again. As we know, Jews are not the ones that are making people Jewish. It doesn't interest us, okay? But the first thing he did before anything, when he became president, as you know, he came to Eretz Israel and he went to the Kotel to say thank you to Hashem. You agree that we live in a crazy world? Very mebulbal? Okay.
Absolutely.
And then the next thing, he's going to the Pope, because the Pope called him because he didn't speak nice about the Pope. Both are Argentinians. Both are in Argentina. So he goes to the Kotel to have success when he goes to the Pope. Okay? So you see that, why do I tell you such a story, which is today, which is not 100 years ago, or 200, or in the story, Rav Yosselman Mirosheim, or the Maharam Mirotenburg. It's a story of today, 2024. So it's very funny. And when the king asks advice, he asks Chachamim Yodei Haitim, and we know that Yodei Haitim sheyodim le'aber shanim v'chodashim, they know how to make the calendar. These are Jews. And then, since they don't answer, so Mehuman answers, who is Haman, and he says, I suggest the king, not only does he give advice, but he tells the king what to do exactly. I suggest the king to write that Vashti should never come in front of him anymore, meaning to kill her. And he proposes himself to be the killer. Don't forget, Achashverosh killed the father of Vashti, Belshazzar. Now, Haman suggests to kill Vashti. So we are in good company. There's very good people, right? And he says, the famous pasuk that if you write something, velo ya'avor, and it will not be able to be erased, because there is a law in Persia 2000 years ago that if you sign something with the ring of the king, it's a seal, then you can never change it anymore. Is it clear? So the pasuk, as we know, says, just tell you one thing, and every time we'll try to find something which is a little bit interesting. It says, V'yikatev b'datei paras umadai. It should be written all over 127 provinces. V'lo ya'avor, and it's very clear. You know, teachers try to skip a little bit. Maze v'lo ya'avor. Once it's written and sealed by the seal of the king, you can't erase it. Asher lo tavo Vashti lifnei hamelech, that she should be killed. Okay, because Haman and Vashti are not exactly friends. Now we have a problem. In Perek Chet, it's very, very interesting. Pasuk. One minute. The king suggests to kill Haman because he found Haman stepping over the bed or the sofa where Esther was. It's very little to do with politics, but he gets furious. Hagam lichbosh hamalka imi babayit. You want to take my queen as well, okay? And then he says, just a minute. Tell you exactly what he says. The king says, gives the rings that he took away from Haman, and he gives it to Mordechai. And he says, Pasuk Chet, Perek Chet, Pasuk Chet. Esther goes and says, please save us, and not just me, but my whole nation, etc. Ve'atem kitvu al haYehudim katov ve'enechem. Write whatever you want, that it should be like, pashkevilim in the streets. B'shem hamelech, v'chitmu b'tabaat hamelech, and sign it with the seal of the king. Kirtav, but don't forget, kirtav asher nirtav b'shem hamelech, v'nachtom b'tabaat hamelech, and ashiv. But again, the same words, but don't forget that you find an eitzah, because something which has been sealed by the king, and ashiv you can't change. Perek Chet, Pasuk Chet. So the king is saying, do whatever you want, but don't change it. And do you remember what Mordechai did? Mordechai did something unbelievable. Mordechai was thinking, and so says the Ibn Ezra on these psukim. And he says the following. Okay, just a minute. You write concerning the Jews, as is good in your eyes, seal it with a royal seal, so says the king to Esther, because whatever you want, but because an edict which is written in the king's name and sealed with royal seal cannot be changed, cannot be recalled. So Haman has written an edict to kill all the Jews, and it can't be changed. Okay, so how can you do it? You have to annul the previous edict and everything. You remember the problem and you know the answer?
He said the Jews could defend themselves.
Who is it? Malka? No.
Brianna.
Brianna, yeah, I recognize your voice. So Rav Avram bin Ibn Ezra says, very strange. Mordechai was a great sage, and he wrote the following thing on the walls of Shushan, like the walls of Yerushalayim. Please be informed as follows. The king commanded Haman, etc., to issue a royal edict which called on the Jews to slay their enemies on the 13th of Adar. So he says, However, that was not the plan of the king. Haman changed the edict without the king's knowledge and made it call for the slaying of the Jews on that day. And when the king became aware of his evil plan of Haman, now you have to realize Mordechai knows that the king is as bad as Haman. But sometimes you have to be focused. Karega, he wants to save the Jews. So he's not going to tell the king, listen, you agreed with Haman and you agreed, and it would be not at all practical. So he says, when the king became aware of the bad plan of Haman, he had him hanged. And the end, this is Perek Chet, Posuk Chet. And when is Haman hanged? At the end of Perek Zayin. So the proof that the king doesn't agree, he doesn't let Haman write something and then hang him. So he uses the situation, Mordechai, according to the Ibn Ezra, and he says, when the king realized that Haman had bluffed him, the king, he didn't bluff him at all. He made him agree. But that he bluffed him, he had him hanged for daring to attack the Jews who give him good advice and all these things. The precise opposite of the king's intention. Ha ha ha. This is Ibn Ezra. Therefore, the king has commanded that new letters should be written with a correction. So it's not a change, but a correction, sealed by the king, giving effect to the king's original intention. And this is what the Megillah means when it states that afterwards is going to be written just after the Nahafor, that on Purim everything became the Nahafor, the Nahafor, the Nahafor. Can you imagine? So it's a very funny story. It's a strange story. Mordechai is as sly as Yaakov with Lavan because we are not allowed to be pigeons. You know what I mean? Okay. But if we read the Megillah on a deeper level, and this is where I want to get, we find that Haman is Amalek. Haman is you remember one year we did the first perek and a half of the Gaon Mivilna. We did it as well on Ruth, and it's totally al pisod. Says Rav Dessler, Mirta Eliyahu, that Haman and Amalek is the same thing. It's the forces of evil. And the king we know is always, when it's only written king, it's always Hashem. Anyway, Lev Melachim B'Yad Hashem. So I'm not afraid if it's Obama or if it's Biden because everything is from Hashem. But when it says only the king, it means Hashem. So if we interpret on a deeper level the story, because if not, why is it so important, all this? Yes, Asher lo yavor, ken asher yavor. It's a battle between the forces of Tov and Ra, where in the human soul. Sometimes it appears that the powers that Hashem has given to the Satan, meaning to the Yetzer Hara, so great that it's almost impossible to overcome it. The edict cannot be changed. V'lo ya'avor. We can't win the Yetzer Hara. Sometimes that's how it looks. It's at the end, Rav Dessler says this, it's not, the whole thing is not in the translation, it's Norah Chaval, but very difficult subjects were not always translated. Rav Carmel, who made the Hebrew one with Rav Friedlander, when he did the translation himself in English, he chose parts which are a bit easier, but a bit is written, and the edict cannot be changed, rescinded. It's the edict Bashamayim, the Yetzer Hara. In other words, what has accumulated in our hearts as a result of our chatoim, and the Timtum Halev, which is an expression of our Dessler, that a diamond can never be dirtied, but the misaviv can be dirtied. The diamond itself is pure. Neshama shenatata bi tehorahi. That's a diamond. But we have Timtum Halev, which can be so sick that you can almost, even with a machine, and it's going to be very painful, you have to, and you might hurt the heart. When you clean the Timtum Halev, you might hurt the heart. And when you clean too much the ring, who knows if you want to make a scratch, it depends what kind of, perhaps with a shamir or I don't know what, the diamond. Okay, so it might have been so strong that it can't be broken anymore. The Timtum Halev, that's Paro, that's people like that. If one wants to says Rab Dessler, if one goes deeper and he uses Meforshim, if one wants to defeat the Yetzer, one cannot wait until it has established a very, very strong position in our hearts. Something that you can't get through. One has to tackle it from the very beginning by recognizing the weakness of its arguments and the falsity of its promises. It's not difficult at that stage to realize that all the insinuations of the Yetzer Hara are false from beginning to end. We should adopt Mordechai's strategy, and that's why it's such a big to-do about the Lo Ya'avor, yes, no, who cares, right? We should adopt Mordechai's strategy and insist that we have the truth, and it is the Yetzer which has perverted the facts. This is the only way to defeat the Yetzer Hara properly. And then he brings Rav Menachem Mendel Mivitebsk, who was a very big Hasidic leader, and he says that it is a tried and tested method to treat the Yetzer when it first comes to tempt us as someone whose intentions are the precise opposite of what he says. If you understand that what he says is for sure the opposite, if the Yetzer says do this, understanding to mean don't do it. We have a little bit the same idea when we say when we have Negias, you know, when Rab Dessler, Leshitosoi, he says when you, before Rosh Hashanah, when you do tshuva, you make a list of all what you have to change, and what you really have to change is what you did not write. Rab Dessler was a Baal Musar, a little bit heavy even, a bit hard, but that's what he said. So if the Yetzer says do this, understand it to mean don't do this. And if it says don't do this, it's an invitation, yes, to do. And Rav Dessler says there is a game where two people or two children hold a conversation, and they agree that yes will mean no, and no will mean yes. You know, children, they do it even with a face, kacha and kacha, etc. And they tell you that no is yes and yes is no. This makes it much easier to defeat the Yetzer because you take it at the root. Once one realizes that whatever the Yetzer says is wrong, it's much easier to recognize the truth by turning the words of the Yetzer on their head. And this is the Nahafoch. Isn't it nice? And now I understand all those details, which in the Megillah, sometimes a girl had the chutzpah, or perhaps not the chutzpah, to ask me, why do we have to learn so many details in Tanakh? I said, who did you learn with? You have to see the beauty of Torah, that it has always many, many levels. Is it clear? Finished for the first time that we do something on Purim.
Okay,
I go
thanks.
back. It's nice, huh? It's in Michtav Eliyahu Bet, in Hebrew, page 50. After a whole long chapter, which is fascinating, on the battle of the Yetzer Hara, it tells you that it has a system in Megillat Esther. So when I fell on this, I said I want to share it with you. Is it clear? Michtav Bet, page 50, Lemala. Okay?
Thank you.
Now, Rav Matisyahu. We did another one. Yes, you remember, we did another one. Here is one where he mixes halacha with other things. It's very, very interesting. Matisyahu was a very open-minded person, very frum, but very open-minded. When perhaps next time I do with you something on chinuch, we'll be shocked. Matisyahu says it's a child has certain qualities, certain things that he's good at. Let him develop it. One of my children showed had a shidduch and showed the other side. I don't want to go to become too specific. A beautiful picture or a piece of music that one of the children had written, and the person answered. The other side answered, "Don't want to hear. Only Torah, only Torah." Now, HaKadosh Baruch Hu gave all kinds of beautiful things to people so that they should develop the Torah through this as well. Yes, you remember that Rav Breitowitz said years ago, I never heard the story from anybody else, but that one of the grandchildren of the Maharal Prague was not so good theoretically in learning, so he made him make a lot of maquettes, you know, to build the Mishkan, the Bet HaMikdash, the way it's written in the Gemara. And through this, he learned a huge amount because he could put it lemaise, he could design it. Every person is different. So Rav Matisyahu is very open. This one is connected, is very interesting with halacha. It's very connected with halacha, which is very interesting, which is changed, which is different. Okay. So he speaks about that. What is a rational for the mitzvot? Transgressing, making a chet, or doing a mitzvah, what is a rational? And he brings the two scholars, the two schools. He says that one view says, that's the theoretical part, the introduction. He says that when Hashem tells us to do a mitzvah, one part could say that he's like a doctor. A doctor prescribes a medication for a patient. Okay? In other words, Hashem, in his infinite wisdom, understands that we will benefit from the trufa, from the medicine, meaning from the mitzvah. Okay? It will accomplish great things in the olamot elyonim. Okay? And this is already a little bit Kabbalah, mystical. In other words, in mystics, in Kabbalah, when somebody makes a mitzvah, does a mitzvah, is building buildings and skyscrapers and whatever you want in the Olam Hanitzchi Lemala. Okay? And when he sins, it's a till on buildings. You don't have to look at pictures to know what it's all about those days. Okay? Therefore, the relationship between HaKadosh Baruch Hu and the human being is a doctor-patient relationship. In other words, you ask the person, why do you take this drug? You know what it is? Doctor's tzivui. The doctor told me to. That's what he said. So, and why do you obey the doctor? Did the doctor say, if you don't take it, I'll put you in prison? Absolutely not. He knows that it's for his good. Okay, this is one school. Okay, and it has as well to do with self-interest because a person wants to feel better. Okay, and Hashem knows exactly how he made the person, what medicine could help, what mitzvah he did, the mode d'emploi of the Jew made by Hashem, who is the creator of that body. Right? You know what it is. There is a question?
We could get there as late as 8 and still get stuff.
What? I didn't hear. Anybody spoke and asked a question? No, it seems that not. Okay. There is this is A. B, different school of thought. The relationship is not doctor and patient. The relationship is king and servant relationship. And this is if the doctor says, if the king says one word, the servant can be killed. The eved can be killed. You know, I like the word eved. I don't like slave. It's very even. It's very different. You know, when you say slave, it has a negative connotation. We can do with a slave whatever we want, which is true. But eved comes from avodah.
You can say servant.
Yeah. But absolutely. Because when I say slaves, it's very negative. And what I want to try to say, the best is not even servants. The best is eved milashon avodah. Because when you think, why do I say it? Because I can't refrain myself from saying it, because the parsha is we're still before Tuesday night, and the parsha is mishpatim. And mishpatim begins with eved ivri. if since Mishpotim is a parsha that speaks about Ben Adam Lachavero a lot, I would have said if somebody is poor, so give him money. Instead, it says Eved Ivri, the whole parsha of Eved Ivri. And how do you behave to an Eved Ivri? If you have only one cushion, you give it to him. If you have two wines, the Rambam, if you have two wines, a good wine and a bad wine, you give him, you change and you give him the good wine. I mean, you behave to him with tenderness, with good sky, as an example. But what do you make him do? You make him work. Eved, Oved. You make him into a normal human being, because half of the people that are criminals or ganovim, it's because they didn't have and then they took. So you don't put him in prison. I speak theoretically at the best, you don't put him in prison, where he learns worse, but you put him in a situation to work for the Chofetz Chaim. I wouldn't mind being the slave, the servant, the eved, whatever you want, of the Chofetz Chaim, the au pair of the Chofetz Chaim for a short while. It would be gewaldig. So you understand? So the king-servant relationship is the maximum I agree to say, but the king, the Melech Eved relationship, okay? Now, it's true that the Eved's life depends totally on the Melech, okay? And the Eved is obligated to serve, to satisfy every wish of the Melech, okay, or of the boss. But the reasons, the explanations, the motivation, lo chashuv. If suddenly the king says to the Eved, now walk on your head, he has to do it because that's an Eved. As servants, we are obligated to serve. As patient, doctor, it's totally different than at king and servant. Again, if a king tells his servant to stand on his head, you have to do it. And why is he doing? Because the king told me. You understand the difference? That's the second school. Mitzvahs, because the king said. Everything's a chok, because the king said. Okay? So, A, because it's good for me. Krill? But in B, it's not a consideration. I'm sure it's good for me, but we have both. The truth is that both are true. But you understand the difference of schools. What is a mitzvah? Now, that's the introduction of Matisyahu Salomon. Is it clear to everybody? Those two schools, and both are true. Elu ve'elu divrei Elokim chaim. Now, in the vidui, and I'm not speaking now in Elul, I'm speaking by Sfardim every evening. By Ashkenazim, we just had Yom Kippur Cotton. Vidui is something which is more than just once a year. We say, Oshamnu, Bogadnu, Gozalnu. Oshamnu, Bogadnu, Gozalnu, right? A, B, C, Aleph, Bet, Gimel, Dalet, 20. Maze Oshamnu, Hashem, Ata Hashem, you're guilty. We are guilty. Bogadnu means many things. First of all, it's interesting. It's a beged. You know what is a beged? It's clothes. Why is beged we betrayed? Because if you buy something very, very well cut, and I tried it on one of my daughters many, many years ago. She was a bachura. She was a kale, and we saw something, a suit. She wasn't looking exactly like for cinema. You know what I mean? So we went into a shop and I said, I just want to try something to see the difference. And I told them I'm not going to buy it. And they're right. They make their husband. They think perhaps in the end she'll buy. And imagine it was a suit, dark blue suit, just top and bottom. And it was, perhaps I would tell you it was 6,000 or 7,000 shekel. Now, I'm not used to buy such things. But when she put it on, she looked a different person. Beged is boged. If it's well cut, if it's good, it can betray the real look. Le tov or le ra. You understand? That's where beged comes from. It's very interesting. But bogadnu, besides betraying, it means as well to rebel. So we said Oshamnu are guilty, bogadnu we're rebelling, and gozalnu we're ganvening. So we say Oshamnu we were guilty, bogadnu we rebelled, gozalnu we robbed. His whole subject is going to be on the robbing. Oshamnu, according to the Gaon Mivilna, is we destroyed, something different. You know why? Because he doesn't make it from Hashem, he makes it from Shmama. The Gaon Mivilna says that it comes from Shmama. Shmama is making a desolation. So it's destroying Shmama. Okay? So it refers to the doctor-patient relationship between Hashem and us, that through our chatoim, yes, we have made shmama in the upper worlds. Okay? We have created distraction. Boganu, we rebelled. Yes, we are making we are announcing that we rebelled, that we disobeyed. Okay? We violated the king's servant relationship because we needed to have absolute obedience. At the third statement, we begin going into specifics. And what? We say we robbed Gozalnu. And that's his introduction. And it's strange because why should it be when we say the first two, Oshamnu, Boganu, it's general. But robbery, every night we say it on Yom Kippur, we say it, but every night or every day or every Yom Kippur Kotan, what's going on, okay? And number two, are we robbers? Are we ganovim? Do we break into other people's houses? Do we take the wallets of people in the street? No, okay? But, says Matisyahu, instead of speaking theory, I'm going to speak practical. Most of us are guilty of robbery in one form or another. So I know, I came into the house and I made noise and I woke up the people that were sleeping. Or do we like this one? We're ganvening the sleep, which is, by the way, something you can't give back. It's true, but he doesn't speak about this. It's like the person that says, I forgot, and in the bank, I took a tiny piece of paper, which is anyway made for people, and I didn't ask for shoes. And, you know what it reminds me of? Esav asking how to take myself from salt or from straw. When we are exaggerated, it's bluff. Okay? Now, because most people are guilty of robbery, like it says, for example, that even if you don't say Lashon Hara, but most people are guilty of avak Lashon Hara. Just the saying nunu, or, or making a face, body language or something, we are all guilty a lot. And the same thing with robbery. And he gives frightening examples, okay? And if you say that everybody does it, you should not say, okay, if everybody does it, it's okay. And the opposite, it's a reason for alarm. Oy ve'izmir, okay? Not to fall into the trap. So what's going on? Again, when the Torah says that it's forbidden to steal, and it's not in Aseret HaDibros. What do you mean it's not? Lo tirtzach, lo tignov. So is it or is it not? Shoshana, you are on mute. You're muted.
Lo signov is referring really to kidnapping.
Exactly, yeah. Letzarenu, it's too close to home, karega. Lo aleinu. It's like in the morning, I'm sure we all have a stronger kavona when we say matirasurim. In the past, we said the Yetzer Hara is keeping us prisoner, and now we say matirasurim, pshat. Whether we want it or not, we would have never thought it could happen. We would have never thought, okay? So when the Torah forbids gezel, again, it can be many things. So for example, so he says, Matisyahu, and here is where he gets even into halacha, and it's very interesting. It's different. One time I was teaching something from Matisyahu, and somebody told me, this is not Musar, this is halacha. So if halacha is not part of Musar, I just read in the paper where the Gdolim said, Everybody is speaking those days about Ben Adam Lachavero. So we don't want people to only do Ben Adam Lachavero. You're going to say, okay, so let's not do Ben Adam Lachavero. That's not what they say. They say we have both, and both are as important. We have to learn Hilchos Shabbos all the time, like Rav Zilberstein said, as soon as it was the 7th of October, and it was Shabbos, it was Simchas Torah, it was everything. And we have as well Ben Adam Lachavero. We have both on the same level. So one of the, now he gets into, like I said, I'll give you many examples that he brings. One is Oshek. Oshek. It means withholding someone else's rightful property. Now, somebody lends you an object and say, when will you give it back? And you say Monday. And then you don't give it till Wednesday or Thursday, unless you give a call to the person and to say, can I keep it 2 more days because you live far and I don't have the time to bring it, or do you need it? If not, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday is called Oshek, it's ganvening, it's stealing. Can you imagine? It's very, very interesting, okay? I'm not talking about somebody that lends you money and then you deny that he lends it to you. That's for sure bad. Not speaking only about denying it, but you're late in paying it back. It's not a joke. It's not a joke. You understand? It's interesting. Again, I didn't say you can't discuss it with him, negotiate with him. You have to be very careful that he's not ashamed to tell you that he needs it or that he would like it back. I heard even a story of the Chofetz Chaim, who wanted to be always emes and didn't go away. And he knew that somebody is going to come to him to borrow money from him. And he did not feel like borrowing him because that person never gives back. But to tell him, I don't have money to lend you, he didn't want either. So he gave the money, all the money he had in the house, to Rav Elchanan Wasserman, his student. And he explained, when he comes, I want to be able to tell him that I don't have money. So he gave it to his student. Here is a story of emes. And I would have never thought that the Chofetz Chaim doesn't want to lend money, but depends. I don't know the story, I don't know the case, and we never know if a story is true. That's a story, it might be a message, but the message is there. You know, one of the sons of Rav Chaim Shmulevich, Ad 120, is alive. He says a story is never true unless proven. All the stories, but it doesn't matter because the message, okay? In other words, the lender has to give you an extension. You bought a product in a store on credit. You don't pay your bill on time. Not talking about not paying your bill at all. That's, of course, that's gneva, but you don't pay it on time. Today, I went to Yesh. For those that are in Israel, I think everybody's in Israel. And it's the 4th or the 5th time that I go to Yesh to try to bring back something that I owe them. And they never knew on which thing to put them. And I gave them an idea. Today I was fed up. On Hanukkah, I went and I bought some detergent, something to clean the house, which was on sale. And it was 5 minutes before they wanted to close the shop because, you know, it's from neighborhood, so they want as well to go. And now lately, Hanukkah, there was no cousins working in the shop, so people wanted to close the shop. They pushed me literally out. And I said, I didn't pay, let me just pay. We already closed the coupon, you can't, and they threw me out. Now, it's their fault, they threw me out. But it doesn't, they're not allowed to throw me, it's a reshet. Yesh is a whole thing. So I owed the money. And we didn't know how to put the money. So I don't know how many times they refused me the money. And I was always mensch because that money I owe. Today I went to the shop, to the part where you go for reclamation, that they thought they have to give me money. I said, no, I owe you money, so much and so much. But what are we going to do? Bring me the same thing. I brought the same thing. It was a totally different price. I bought it because it was on sale. So it doesn't fit. So they didn't know what to do. So I said, you know what? Make as if I bought something else from the same company so that they should get the money in the end. And I owed 36 shekel, אפשר לחשוב. So they found something which cost 35.80. And they said, okay, it's okay. I said, no, it's not okay. I still owe 20 agorot. So we bought 2 plastic bags, which are 10 cents every month, so that I should. But it took till today. I wonder what it's called that I didn't pay before. It wasn't my fault. I went each time. Perhaps I should have insisted more. So when I read this, I'm a sugar. We don't realize how the details count. Today, it's a story that happened today. I can't teach you and then be a Ganev. Teach you about this and be a Ganev, right? Okay. If you're late
I'm sorry. Just one question. Why can't they be Michael on the money if they say to you, don't worry about it?
Because they are not allowed to be. It's like the guy in the bus that say, you can go, you don't have to pay.
The bus driver, it's not his business.
It's not his business. The only thing is that I asked Eged, and if the machines in the bus are broken, I don't have to next time bring double.
It's not your problem.
No, but I haven't gotten the answer. I am an old lady. The bus drives like I'm a sugar. If I go and it's broken, but further in the bus with 1 million people to cross, it's not broken. Do I have a chiyuv to go to the next? And that I don't have an answer yet. If any of you has an answer, you tell me. It's an interesting question. You understand? Because
well, the answer is what happens when the police come on the bus and they want to check your ticket.
So usually it has happened to me when I haven't paid. It's not the police, it's the guy that is,
Yeah.
So I show him that it doesn't work. He sees it, he checks it, he sees. He never told me, I don't look so young, he never told me, why didn't you go to the end of the bus? By the way, most of the time it's all the things. But if it's not all, most of the time he will do it for me. In other words, he wants me to have paid. He wants me to have paid. So he'll do with him that I owe whatever I owe, but he won't make me pay because the machine doesn't work. I mean, of course, if there is 2 machines, one opposite the other, a second away from me, and I say the machine doesn't work, it's not beseder. But I don't think I have to go till the end of the bus, but I don't know. I would like to ask the right person because not people that don't know, but you understand why they can't be moichel. And very often they are moichel. And you feel when they are cousins, they are even more moichel, as if they want what you say in slang, liegt focket eged. They don't want us, you understand, it's a lot of, they can't, okay? Another way of gezel that we don't realize is causing damage to the property of a person. And the Gemara is full of all those details of this thing. What do you owe, and what about the damage itself, and if it's your animal that made a damage to the property, if it's a fire that you were not, it's not your fault, it's yes your fault. All those details. I mean, people are learning for years in order to become a dayan, for years. Okay. In other words. But there is no specific mitzvah mentioned in the Torah defining causing monetary damage to another person's property. Rabbeinu Yonah says that all forms of damage are included in the general prohibition of gezel. Now, Rabbeinu Yonah is the time of Rishonim, of the Ramban, cousin of the Ramban, etc., etc. Okay. When you cause somebody a damage, you're removing from him a portion of the value of his property. That's called gezel. Okay. Now, it doesn't matter that you don't put it in your pocket at all, but you caused it. So it could be that you don't. It could be it's not your fault. You take a keter chair, you sit on it, and a leg falls, and you even hurt yourself, and you fall. I don't think you have to pay the chair. But if you do like that, many, many times, like people do, and the chairs are not very strong nowadays, it's not like the old keter, it could be you are. Ich weiß nicht. You understand what I'm saying? It's very interesting. So that's the second group. Now I see it's 6 o'clock. We'll finish the next thing. He's fascinating because he's going to explain us why we can't steal from goyim. And when yes and when no. And remind me when I'll continue to tell you what a good yeke Rav Shimon Schwab said on the subject, because it's very, very interesting as well. Once I read an article of his, and it opened my world, because we don't know exactly. So it's a totally different type of Musar, but it's Musar. somebody told me, it's not Musar, it's Halacha. So what is Musar? Be jolly. Musar is do the Halacha properly. And when I read today in the morning, just a title, I don't read papers, but I don't have time, and it's in Hebrew and everything, but and small, but that you have to be as careful from both, you know. People have so much tendency nowadays to speak about Ben Adam Lachavero, and it's shocking. Because somebody told me that the Rosh, 1,000 years ago, said that Hashem loves the second Luchot even more than the first. I want to see it written. I haven't seen it written, but I heard it today. Because I had to go somewhere and give a shir, and the person before me said this. Just I was a bit early, the person, but I don't know where it would be. I'll ask. You understand? So we'll continue next time. It's interesting, huh? It's different.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
We
It's a bit
don't realize, for example, when you're on the bus and you put it in on a different stop, they keep track of how many people get on at one stop versus another. And that's how they know if they need more buses. And if when the Pakid comes and he puts it on, you're on a different stop already. So it's not even telling the company how many people get on at that particular spot.
I understand, but the reason why we didn't immediately do it is because it didn't work. So I don't know if we're guilty.
Right.
I don't know if it's good. Yeah, whatever.
Absolutely.
It's interesting. Yeah, but what you're answering is when somebody is at an age where you don't pay anymore. They say, but you have a child under the age of 3 or 4, you don't have to, he doesn't possess a card where you don't pay, but you have to put it in, because babies, they don't. But when a person passes the age, they want you to put it in anyway for the reason you said.
Right.
He wants to know how many old people.
They want to know that I got on that stop.
Yeah.
No,
And
it's
you can
not
see
only that. The reason also is because they have to make this Egged, there's Superbus, there's Extra, and there's a light rail, and there's the train. There's so many companies, and we are giving the money. We're not giving the money if we're over 75. We are using this facility, that facility, the other, all the different companies, and they have to make their financial cheshbonot of who owes money to who and where the money has to go, which is being paid by the you're getting a card. The people are not paying directly to Egged, they're paying to the Ravkav.
Yes,
and the Ravkav has
absolutely.
to pay this much, 10% to this company and 20%, depending on how many people are riding. That's, I
So
think, the
many
big.
things.
You're not a
Absolutely.
psychologist, you're an accountant.
No, but
Exactly.
that's what I think it is. And that's why also people who
agree.
don't pay, the companies have to get paid. The companies are not doing this for free. The government or somebody's paying for
I
me
don't
to
know. That
go
I
for
don't know.
free.
I don't know. But whichever way, it's true. All these things are much more complicated than what we think. Yes, yes,
Right.
yes. And
Okay,
you know,
I have to go now. What?
The problem is that there is a very big problem because Dina de Malchuta Dina, the Chofetz Chaim used to take a stamp and tear it because of the Doha, because the people worked for it. So if it wasn't obliterated, he would do this. But it's Lifnim Shurat Adin because it's their problem to obliterate it. And if you don't, it's their problem. But the Chofetz Chaim didn't want to get the letter for free, so he would do this. Okay? But then comes the question, and that we'll speak next week, if it's a Jew or not a Jew. And then comes the question, if it's a Medina that doesn't keep the Torah, or if it's not a Medina that doesn't keep. So it gets into very big problem. Remind me to tell you, the brother of Rav Shimon Schwab was a Talmid of Rav Elchanan Wasserman in Baranovich, and he was Mashgiach in Gateshead Yeshiva. And I discussed these things with all of them because I was a Yeker. And I don't want to say what I saw, but I saw very strange things. You know, passing, nowadays it almost doesn't exist anymore, but passing things through the door to be able to sell it more expensive and paying one's ticket through this. So is it permitted, is it not? And I'll tell you what they said to me. Okay.
Okay, thank you. I'm going to leave.
All the
Thank
best.
you, Rabbanit. Thank you so much.
This was great. I stopped the recording.